5 o'clock in Pirate Country, and it's time to get pumped up with the P-Man. Hit the door and hit the road. 94.3 The Game is going to get you home, and the P-Man's not holding back.
Yes! Yes! Pirates win! Pirates win!
Bring on the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
Holy mackerel! Oh, my goodness!
The flagship station of the ECU Pirates.
We're leading you into the Logan Zone here as we get ready for another football weekend, homecoming weekend in Greenville. Temple comes a call in 2 o'clock on Saturday. And don't forget the East to West, Western North Carolina post-Helene supply drive. Basically bring new socks and bring a new blanket. They're going to be sending that out to the western part of the state. That is what is really needed right now. So our coverage will begin at 11 a.m. on Saturday. And we're looking forward to that with our Anson Belt and Buckle Pirate Game Day Countdown presented by Orthopedics East. We got Mike Mullis coming up later on. He'll be talking about the Fall Classic and a little bit about ECU baseball's fall practice activities and more. But right now we start with an old friend here today. Brian North, host of The Blitz, WCTI 12, joins us here. He is the only person that has been awake longer than I have today, and he's done it in a tie. So that's even more impressive. So, North, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, Patrick. This is a great time of year. Weather's nice. No hurricanes out there, knock on wood. Wish some of our teams would be going a little bit better here this year, but high school football is great, so we still have that.
I got to talk to you about that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here to kind of talk about the games this week and the last game of the regular season. Then there'll be a pause before the playoffs because of all the damage out west. There was also a really nice article written by the Blake guy from High School OT that kind of talked about the subdivision and how the playoffs and championships would play out. So I wanted to get your take on that. But let's start with obviously the news of the week, and that's been the Mike Houston firing as the head football coach. You're a JMU alum.
Yep.
And if not for that Fox News lady, you might be their most popular or most famous alum, if not for her.
Yeah, well, I don't know. There's a lot of pretty good people who are out there. A lot of NFL guys, Charles Haley and Gary Clark and Scott Norwood. And so, look, I'm nowhere close to any of those guys, but life is good. And happy to be a JMU alum. They had a setback last week, but things have been going well overall for them in the Sun Belt, and they still can compete for a conference title there. So far, so good. New coach, new athletic director, so a lot of changes there as well.
So, Mike Houston had success there. He took over a roster that Everett Withers had put together that was a pretty good roster. But you still got to coach him, and he coached him to a national championship. Why didn't it work for Mike Houston in your estimation in Greenville?
A complicated answer, but everywhere he'd been before, he always used other people's players. And to me, Mike Houston was always a great locker room guy. He could rally the troops. He was a great motivator. The one question we had, and I know we talked about it here on this show when he was first hired, can he recruit and can he coach his own players? And so you look at some of the recruiting misses on the recruiting trail, that has something to do with it. Look, I think the pandemic hurt a little bit too and kind of set ECU back a hair. And then adapting with the transfer portal and some of the, and you could probably, if you ask Mike, he'd probably say some of his coaching decisions as far as who he hired to help him out. I think that's been part of it too. When he was hired, he said this was the toughest rebuild that he had encountered in his short coaching career. Lenore Ryan was a great situation he took over. The Citadel was not, and he got them turned around pretty quick, just a couple seasons there, and then he had a pretty full cupboard when he showed up at JMU. When I think he took this job, I think he saw Holton Ahlers here, and I think he saw some things, but it just they just could never get the big high-profile recruits they wanted, and that means you have to rely on the portal a little bit more, and they were a little late to the game on that.
Do you think Mike you talked about the recruiting misses. The most famous one would obviously be, or infamous one would be, the quarterback situation post Holton Ahlers with Mason Garcia, and Mike reportedly stuck to his guns with Garcia on that.
Yes.
I'm not saying they didn't try to get other quarterbacks, but he also was committed to Garcia and hoping that it would go well. And on paper, Mason Garcia checked a lot of boxes in the high school football world. He checked a lot of boxes, and part of that is you got to coach him up. So it goes back to your staff too. Some of the staff hires to me were not, I don't know if it's budgetary or what, but it just seemed like you could get a few more seasoned guys to perhaps be on the staff.
Right, and look, Mike Houston, alpha male, Mike Houston. I don't know how extensive his coaching tree went. Now, he was again Lenore Ryan. He was a high school coach, and then Lenore Ryan, and then the Citadel, and then JMU. His coaching um, branches don't go that far. So I don't know if he had the connections as far as hiring assistant coaches. But as far as the Mason Garcia thing went, you talked to everybody. Mason Garcia was a great practice player. I think they all thought they had something there. It's when the lights came on and people sat in the seats is when he struggled. And Mike is a loyal guy in that sense. And he has said in the past his loyalty is what has got him in trouble with some of the coaching hires and maybe with some of his players. And so you look at that 2-10 season, and that certainly got a lot of people upset. And then in this day and age now, they want you to fix it quick with the portal. And despite the fact they had 3 winnable games coming up to become bowl eligible, it's interesting how NIL, the outside pressures of finances, people contributing a lot more money, and they feel like they have a say in this, put a lot of pressure on the administration to make this change.
Brian North, News 12, host of the Blitz on Friday nights with us here. 5 ECU head coaches is what you have covered in football, I believe.
Yes, like that.
Yep. What does the next coach need to possess? What are the characteristics in your estimation?
Well, certainly it's got to be somebody who's innovative. And you talk about ECU's kind of stuck in between. They're not Power Five conference, they're not a beginning program, but they need somebody to do what Steve Logan used to say he had to do, and that's win left handed. You've got to find different ways. Everybody wants to jump on the portal, everybody wants to jump on NIL, but then you look at Army and Navy and even Duke and even Clemson, sticking to the more traditional way of trying to develop players, and they've been successful this year. So I'm not sure the portal is the only way to go anymore, but you do have to recruit well. So you need someone to come in who is innovative and how to recruit and how to work the portal together, how to work the NIL and the collective. And when colleges are able to start paying their players and maybe you have a little more say in the money side of it, that's going to help. But you just need somebody who's innovative and can lead people and just figure out ways to do it differently than what other people are doing.
You're tied into the high school scene like nobody else in Eastern North Carolina. I've talked about this on air and privately, but Jay Sunalder, the ECU alum, and myself, for Sinclair, your parent company, for 12, do their high school package in Raleigh. I do half the games the beginning part of the year. So we talk to a lot of high school coaches in Raleigh during the course of the week getting ready for those games. And a lot of these programs in Raleigh, like Greensboro and even other places, but especially in Raleigh and Greenville, the big metros, they're sending players to play in the ACC, play in the Sun Belt, play in the SEC, different places around the country. No coach feels like their program's recruited enough by the in-state schools ever. No, now a little different with Carolina because everybody loves Mac Brown. All high school coaches worship at the altar of the Cadillac man, Mac Brown. So the question would be, do you have to recruit Raleigh on East like previous administrations have? And are there players anymore? It just doesn't seem like they're the type of players anymore, especially in the East. Maybe there are. Like I say, you're more dialed in to that scene than I am.
So in the old days, and when I talk about the old days, for me, it's going back to Steve Logan and how he used to recruit those guys who would not have the big stars next to their name. And that was because they were undervalued. Now with the internet, now with all these recruiting bases, now with all these combines the kids go to, they're discovered a little bit earlier, especially the athletes. And that's what all these college coaches are looking for now is athletes, and they'll figure out a way to plug them in. So it's harder to find those diamonds in the rough. But now you throw in the COVID year, which is still out there. We're getting ready to finally get through that. But the COVID year, and which is an extra year, which is kind of clogging things up, and the portal, right? Now coaches want to plug in players who have already lifted and already had training table, already have experience. So it's almost like going from JV to varsity now with some of these programs, whether it's Division II or 1AA, and then you go there a couple years and then you can get recruited to that higher level. So the whole high school recruiting thing is a lot harder. Coaches now recruit from their camps, and they recruit through these combines. They don't go and check people out at the high school games like they used to. So recruiting has changed a lot in that sense. There are still plenty of kids out here. Steve Logan used to like to get guys and develop them. Now do people have the patience to develop those guys? A perfect example is Nishad Strother from Havelock. He was a guy who didn't get many offers. ECU took a chance on him, developed him into a starting offensive lineman, and right when they thought they had a cornerstone on their line, NIL people started coming out of the woodwork and offered him some money. He was supposed to go to Maryland, ended up at Oregon. So it was just become a wild, wild west of money out there. Temptation is the hardest thing to deal with in life. And when you're a young kid and somebody's offering you life-changing money for your family, this has complicated the whole situation as well. To go back to your original question, yes, there are people in Eastern North Carolina that still need a place to play. Are you willing to give them the time to develop, and will you do something to keep them here so they don't enter the transfer portal? That's what the next coach has got to figure out. But there's still plenty of talent here, and I think you kind of have to get back. To me, I've always said you've got to get back to that. Not only football, but basketball and baseball as well, which, Cliff Godwin has done a good job with that. But basketball has been another. We've seen a dearth with all the talent that leaves Eastern North Carolina because ECU didn't offer them a lot of times.
Brian North, WCTI 12. Okay, let me ask you this. We are the next to last weekend of the regular season for high school football. Who's the best team in the coverage area or in the listening area for us?
So, depending on what level you're at, New Bern's really good. Their only losses have been to a Northern Guilford team, which they wish they could get that one back. It was an overtime, a muffed snap on an extra point. And then they lost to Havelock in a game that Havelock rallied, they beat Havelock. They lost to Jacksonville in a game where they were the week before. So New Bern's right up there. Jacksonville's right up there with them. If Jacksonville had a quarterback, I'd say they'd be a state title contender. Havelock does have a quarterback. They'll be a state title contender. In the 2A ranks, I don't know if we have as many good teams this year. 1A, Tarboro is still the deal. North Duplin is undefeated and looking really good. They've got a kid, Trayshawn Ruffin, who's being recruited all over the country. There's some confusion going on right now. Apparently, he verbally committed to Texas A&M last week, and then that got taken down, said his recruitment was open, but then he took that down. So we talk about kids in recruiting. That's an interesting one there. A diamond in the rough of a guy. So 2A, maybe James Keenan. James Keenan's undefeated. That's been a little bit of a surprise, but those Duplin County schools always coming through as they always do.
How good is Richland?
We're going to find out. They had a statement win against West Carteret last week. I wasn't sure they could beat West Carteret, and they smoked them. It wasn't even close. The rest of Richland's schedule has been suspect. Now they're going to take on a White Oak team who has had a much tougher schedule, very physical team. We're going to find out. But look, Richlands has passed the test, and that West Carteret win opened my eyes a little bit more. But this will be the toughest team they faced all year.
We're talking to Brian North here. All right, our Pitt County teams. Farmville got off to a really good start. They've kind of scuffled here lately as a Paul Cornwell team who has a quarterback, speaking of Jacksonville quarterbacks, a Paul Cornwell team that has actually gotten better as the year's gone along. I think North Pitt's pretty good. Rose, not a great year for them, but they have talent. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And then you have Conley and you have South Central. South Central got off to a really good start. And then there's JP2. We talked to their coach last week. All right. So of those teams in Pitt County, who has the most chance to maybe make a little noise?
Oh, boy. Aiden Grifton is young, but you're right. They got the senior quarterback, Nate Brooks, who transferred from Jacksonville. His dad, Steve, used to be the offensive coordinator at Aiden Grifton, and they still have a house that way. And so Nate decided he wanted to go and play somewhere, and AG was the perfect landing spot for him. He's had a really good year, so watch out for them. They are young otherwise, but they are pretty good. North Pitt has a lot of talent, as does Farmville. Farmville lost to West Craven, and they lost to Washington. But outside of that, they've been pretty good. And so there's still in the chance there is a chance they could still win that conference title, depending on how things fall out these next few weeks. North Pitt's got talent. That famous Wilson at quarterback is really good, and all his cousins that play for the team. And Conley's got a good quarterback in Samari Cabell. They're just playing in a tougher environment. I don't know if they have the horses. So of all those teams, I still think Farmville and North Pitt and Aiden Grifton, between those three teams, they're the ones who could make a little noise. John Paul's going to make the playoffs in 8-man. They're going to be the 4th seed, according to Coach Murphy. I don't know if they have anything for those mighty Arundel Parrot Patriots, who you know something about, and then Wayne Christian's pretty good too. So that's kind of the rundown right there. I still think Aiden Griffin's as tough as anybody, though, just because of Paul Cornwell and a well-coached team, and now they have a quarterback.
I'm jettisoned from Parrot at the moment. I don't know where JMU will claim you. I don't know if they will claim me right now. But hey, it's all cyclical. It all comes around. What can I say? All right. Let me ask you this: we're on the cusp of 8 divisions, and do you think that's a good thing for high school sports, or is it a dilution thing?
So North Carolina has what, the ninth most populous state now, and they haven't changed their classifications for how long? Once again, the NCHSAA is a little slow in their development of how to keep up with the times here. So I think 8 may be too many. We saw that with the subdivisions of football for so many years. I thought 6 or 7 classifications might be a little bit better, but I guess they want to go with 8. And then it depends how they distribute those numbers. But having the population base we have, it definitely had to be more than 4. I think 4 was a little antiquated. Everybody I talked to that's kind of smarter than me said 6 was the right number for us. But 8's better than 4. 6 is probably the best number, but they're going to go with 8.
Football, in the grand scheme of things, they probably will be able to pull off the championships without too much indigestion, one would think. Basketball, they got it right finally with kind of a Final Four setting. Now you got to find another venue to host the Final Four setting unless you go back to what you were doing a few years ago. It's the other sports that you're either not going to have enough teams to justify expanding the championship site, but you'll still have too many on hand. Or in the spring, and look, having covered spring championships now for a gazillion years, as you have, they have a hard time finding venues every year. This is going to get more difficult.
Yeah, or they've got a couple choices here. They can go to more college venues that aren't on their circuit, some smaller venues, or they could scratch the best 2 out of 3 format and just go to a 1-game format like some other states do. And just
those baseball coaches are actually going to get another round of best 2 out of 3. You know damn well they're doing that.
That's what they want. But if the state actually stands up to them and you're trying to figure out the facility issue, you can get more games into less facilities if you're just playing a 1-game winner take all. Now, I agree. They're going to get major blowback, but when is the NCHSAA ever worried too much about that, right? They care about their bottom line. They care about the money they can make, getting the facilities that they can show off. So I just think that's one of the possible scenarios is they could go to a 1-game format. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying if facilities are an issue and time is an issue, that's the way you're going to have to go.
They will never take away games from that championship for softball and baseball. They will only add. You watch. All right. Thank you, Brian. Great stuff.
All right. Thank you, P-Man. I'll try to make amends for you over at the Parrot Academy. Make sure everything's cool.
Yeah, just tell them I'm still an alum, believe it or not, and that my dad still coached there 30-some-odd years, and my sister only led the whole thing in scoring. Just tell them that. All right. We will be right back with Mike Mullis coming up right after this timeout on the Patrick Johnson Show.
Taking the rage out of your drive home.
You just cut me off, but it's no big deal.
Patrick Johnson on 94.3 The Game and the new IBX Media app.
Continuing on here from the Working Man's Beach, it is the Patrick Johnson Show. We, of course, will have our Pirate Game Day countdown for you beginning at 11 on Saturday. And stay tuned. We have the Logan Zone coming up at the top of the hour. Tomorrow, Coach Logan will join us on the show, and we resume our 5 o'clock time slot and Joey football as well. All right. We have learned that the World Series Game 1 is tomorrow night. Exclusive report here to the Patrick Johnson Show. Let's bring in ESPN Plus baseball analyst, noted baseball coach, the one and only Mike Mullis. Mully, how are you, buddy?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to see you. And, boy, we are not lacking on a number of things to talk about. We'll get to a lot of ECU. We'll get to some college news. But the Yankees and Dodgers, and it's the most expensive World Series ticket ever on the secondary market. $1,700 is what some sources are quoting for a ticket. Clayton McCullough, Greenville Little League, Row High, ECU, now with the Dodgers. So there's some local rooting interest for you. I don't know of any Yankee Eastern North Carolina or ECU connections on the current roster. I'm sure you do if I have overlooked something. But anyway, so that's that. How do you see that series going? And I think it's the first time, Mully, since the 1950s that the two top home run hitters in each league have met in the World Series.
Yeah, so let's not forget Clayton McCullough spent some time on staff with Tommy Easton and I over at Pitt Community College before he left to go to East Carolina as
You
a
taught
coach
him
under Billy
everything he
Dolphin.
knew. You taught him
Oh,
everything he
that's
knew.
exactly right. Exactly right. And on the Yankees side, if I'm gonna, this is a little bit of a stretch. Carlos Rodon, NC State product, but has ties back to the state. That's about the best I can do. But yeah, you're right, man. Prolific offenses in this one. Maybe questionable starting pitching at times, but reasonably stout bullpens. It's going to be up to the superstars. I mean, it's the Otani and it's what do you get out of the guys that are supposed to be doing it? Aaron Judge, Juan Soto. Probably PJ. You probably have what 5, 6, 7 of the best players in the game right now that'll be involved in this series. So I'm leaning obviously the Dodgers way with the ties to Clayton and and look, I like the way they play. I like the way they go about it. Who doesn't enjoy watching Shohei? He is as close as baseball's had a long time to must see TV. So, but it should be a fun series. I did think it would have been intriguing to have a Subway series, but Dodgers and Yankees, it doesn't get any better than that from a brand recognition standpoint.
I was going to say, this is really in the best of both worlds what Fox and MLB could hope for.
Yeah, look, no question. And I mean, there were some interesting storylines with what the Tigers were doing, and the Padres were finally relevant. And I had a rooting interest there. Mike Schilt, former West Charlotte head coach back at my alma mater in high school. But you're right, man. This is if they could have just picked this series to start the season, they could have skipped the other 162 because this is definitely what TV wants, and I think it is a very broad fan base on both sides of the field. So you're right, man. This is truly a made for TV. I just hope it lives up to the billing. I hope we get 7. I think if it goes 7, it probably leans towards the Dodgers. I think if it's a shorter series, it leads a little more towards the Yanks.
If you were starting a franchise from scratch, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, or Shohei, which one would you want to start your franchise with?
Shohei. And even if he couldn't pitch, I really truly believe, PJ, that dude, you could put him in center field. I believe he could play. I believe he could play anywhere on the field he wanted to play. You mix in the fact that if he comes back and is capable of pitching, but he's also the best hitter, he can run the bases. I mean, he is our generation, our heirs. I mean, he's the closest thing to Babe Ruth that we've ever seen.
Mike Mullis, ESPN Plus college baseball analyst, joining us here. So you say rooting interest Dodgers. If it's a lengthy 6 or 7 game series, you like the Dodgers. If it's a quick series, 5 or less, that favors the Yankees.
That's my feel on it, and I think it goes down to bullpen strength, starting pitching. How deep can they get them? The bullpens are going to be the big dogs in this deal, and again, man, are the superstars? Aaron Judge has been obviously singled out because of being Aaron Judge and not having necessarily the postseason that people will want. Well, his counterpart on the other side, Shohei, made the comment. He goes, it's kind of difficult to hit in the postseason because all these guys are really. So I mean, it's one of those deals. Which superstar will capitalize on the mistakes and the opportunities that are given them? Again, I look forward to what could be a really interesting series. And you mentioned Juan Soto earlier. He's a guy that stands out to me to be a guy that leads the Yankees. If it's not Judge, if they get it from Juan Soto, maybe that bolsters the chance for the Yanks because he is a superstar, but he's not the superstar. Again, I'd love to go back. I need to look at this. I'm going to say 6 of the best players in the game wrapped up in this series.
Okay. I was going to ask you Soto or Betts. Mookie or Soto?
I think Betts is more of a superstar, and I don't know why I feel that way. Maybe it's his versatility. And look, you
He's
can't
been
go wrong
around a
either
little.
way, right?
Seems like he's been around a little longer too
That's right. And,
on the national stage. Yeah.
And Soto is, I mean, he's a great player. No detraction from him, but it does feel like Mookie maybe a little more. But again, a lot of that when you're a superstar with the ability to play marquee positions like center field and shortstop, that's pretty special.
Mike Mullis is with us here. We're talking baseball and obviously the destruction in the Tampa area impacting where the Rays play. They have a quandary. They have located office space down in Tampa. There's been a little bit of some remarks about where will the Rays play, because they certainly won't be able to play opening day at Tropicana Field. Who knows if they'll be able to play anytime soon in Tropicana Field. Oddly enough, Montreal is off the table because of work being done to the Olympic Stadium up there. I think for something related to the Olympics. I think, but nonetheless, it's off the table because there's work being done to that. Montreal there's that proposal to play part of the season in Florida, part of the season in Montreal. All right, so could this mean now the owner of the Bulls has come on this radio station and kind of thrown cold water on this, but do you think that that there's a possibility that we could see Major League Baseball in North Carolina, in Durham, or maybe Charlotte? Who knows? Just on a limited basis.
I mean, is it possible? Sure. Is it probable? I would highly doubt it. Hey, maybe bring them to Granger Stadium, right? I know we just got a new minor league team there, but what the heck? It's not like they were drawing all that much in Tampa anyway. But is that a possibility? I would think so. I don't see it being highly probable right now, and it will be interesting to see how they handle this and what they ended up doing, with the Rays in general.
Yeah, and the quandary in Tampa is, or in St. Petersburg more specifically, is they're going to build a new stadium that'll either be ready in 28 or I think that's actually when it'll be ready. So, I mean, do you spend a lot of money now to refurbish the Trop when you're just going to be moving out in 3 seasons? So, that's also part of the quandary there.
The whole thought with putting professional big league baseball down in Florida has proven to be mediocre at best with the franchises that are there from the success they've had from a fan base standpoint. Obviously, Tampa, St. Pete area has been a little better than the Marlins, but it does seem like there are other more viable. I mean, do they temporarily go out to Oakland and play? They got a stadium to sit there with nobody in it.
Yeah,
but,
that's true.
I don't know. I don't know how they facilitate that, but it seems like the again they're building one of these super facilities down there in the Tampa area. But I don't know, PJ. It still doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem to be the most supported and the best use of one of the big league franchises.
Mike Mullis with us here. Mully, can you hang on?
Sure.
All right. We're going to talk Pirates with Mike Mullis. We're going to talk some of the goings-on at ECU and get Mully's opinion on that. All of that on the other side after this from Philip the Ref Pilkington and a 94.3 The Game Sports Flash update.
And now, the stunning conclusion of the show. It's the P-Man here on 94.3 The Game.
And college baseball analyst Mike Mullis, Greenville's Mr. Baseball, with us here. We'll be with us for much of the balance of the rest of the way here. Mully, let me ask you this, just one other thing on this. You remember a few years ago when there was talk of, this goes back maybe 2 decades plus, Greensboro, the triad would be where Major League Baseball could relocate because you could draw from Raleigh and draw from Charlotte. I think this may even predate the Hurricanes, and if it doesn't predate the Panthers, it's pretty darn close to around the time that the Panthers were just getting off the ground. Point being that there was really no Major League big league professional sports in the state to speak of at the time, or if there were, they were in its infancy, and that includes the Hornets as well. So, if you were to have a franchise in North Carolina, where is the most ideal spot for a big league expansion franchise?
Maybe I'm partial because it's home, but I got to say Charlotte. And my justification or thought process behind that is this isn't like football. So, football is going to play a finite number of home games on only a couple of days of the week. It's either going to be a Saturday or Sunday, depending on time of the year, that kind of thing. With Major League Baseball playing every day of the week, are people going to make that commute to the Triad area from outlying areas to go to a Tuesday game or go to a Wednesday game, as opposed to if you're in Charlotte, you have that population base that you would be drawing from with an extended geography in a much closer area, and that uptown district of Charlotte is such a thriving business area right now that it would be more readily attended, especially at the corporate level, in my opinion, if they have it there in Charlotte. So that would be my biggest justification for it. Would be, now if the team was really, really good, I think that's different. I mean, we've seen people leave Greenville and go to Atlanta for Braves games or up to Baltimore for Orioles games, even during a midweek, and especially during the summer when the kids are out of school. But when you're talking about an expansion team and the first few years and struggles that go with being an expansion team, I just think you've got to go where the people are and make it as accessible as possible.
All right, Mully, fall ball going on. And for the Pirates, the purple and gold games coming up, if they've not already been played. I'm not sportsing hard enough because I may not know that off the top of my head. It's been a busy week, just in case you haven't been paying attention out there. But let me ask you this. 31 new players into the ECU roster. And there have been some growing pains from what we understand.
Yeah, and I will tell you, but there has been growth to go with those pains. And I've been fortunate enough to watch him play a number of times and have seen a lot of the same guys on the mound because it happens to be typically Sundays when I can, spend the most time out there. But, man, I tell you, some impressive freshmen on the mound positionally. There's been some guys that you've really seen kind of come into their own over the fall work. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to be excited about. I can tell you that the staff there feels really good about the entirety of their freshman class, even saying it may be one of their best that they've had since they've been there. So I think there is a lot to be excited about and a lot to look forward to with Pirate baseball coming up in the spring. But there's a number of names, and I'll be honest with you, PJ, I've had a difficult time going, okay, right now they're wearing basically tops with numbers with no names. So I'll take my phone out and look at the roster and kind of trying to learn these guys. So I haven't committed a ton of guys' names to memory just yet, but I will tell you, it's been an impressive exercising growth to see where they are now as to where they came from. And this week it'll be a really interesting take on it for the community. Tommy Eason and Pitt Community College come over to play the Pirates, and I think it's 12:30 with a Meet the Pirates deal afterwards. So that'll be a lot of fun. And let's not forget the job that Tommy and staff have done over at Pitt Community College with the Bulldogs and putting a product out there that this community can be extremely proud of, year in, year out.
So with the changing face of college athletics, since we're in the day-to-day minutia when we usually talk to you of a season, what has been the big impact on college baseball?
Hey, look, we're living it. The movement, 31 new guys, the transfer portal impact that was had on the East Carolina program last year. We're in an interesting time of the year heading towards the holidays and the Christmas break for the schools. You'll see the market will be flooded with players that are finding out that they're maybe not going to have roster spots or maybe not be very satisfied with what their role may be in their current situation. So, I mean, it's it's no different. 31 new players is obviously an extreme number, not the biggest one we've heard. I think last year going into the season, I want to say UNC Charlotte rolled in with like 36 new guys, and that would be the high water mark from what I've heard. Now, also don't forget, right down the road at Bowie's Creek, Campbell lost basically the entirety of their roster, save maybe 5-7 guys, something like that. So their turnover number is going to be huge too. So I think everybody's kind of going through the same things. Unfortunately, like the rest of college athletics right now, BJ, the rich get richer. I did just happen to look the other day. It looks like Zach Root's going to break the starting rotation and may even be the Saturday guy for Arkansas. And so you lose a guy like that and try to replace him. You kind of do the best you can, and I do. I feel like the Pirates have done a nice job.
Mully, when you look at the American overall, and to me, baseball is the interesting study because, let's face it. There's a kind of a baseline you have to put into football to operate. Now, some teams are not putting as much as others into football, but by and large, everybody in the American invests in football. It's just at the top end, how much more are you willing to invest? Basketball, there's a little bit of a discrepancy, as we all know far too well, with Memphis in the league and some of the others, and an increasing commitment in Greenville, let's just say. But with baseball, by far, ECU puts more financial emphasis on it than anyone else. We can have the debate, and it is a merited debate of, to what end, because it's not a revenue sport. And look, everybody's commitment level in athletics are different across the conference. So with that said, do you see, just with the state of college athletics, where the SEC and the ACC seem to put a lot of emphasis on baseball, but they have money to spend because of the media deals that football and basketball bring in. And do you see this maybe kind of just persisting in the American where, there are programs that frankly just do the bare minimum?
Yeah, you've heard Cliff talk about that. Until the conference takes the sport seriously, or maybe even more consistently, then, we're going to be transient rosters. We're going to be feeding grounds for some of these SEC programs. We're going to have a developmental feel as a conference. Now, I think East Carolina is somewhat insulated from that, but obviously we saw last year where, we had kind of heard about this portal thing as it relates to baseball, really hadn't affected us, and last year had quite an impact. So, when you look at what the SEC is doing, and the SEC specifically, and this does trickle down some to the ACC, but the SEC has revenue-generating baseball programs because they have facilities that allow for it. When you go to, LSU, and I don't know the exact numbers, but you're talking 10,000 plus seat stadiums that are readily full. And it's so funny when I had those conversations with folks here in the community about ECU baseball. Maybe they make some money, maybe it's really, really close, but it's, despite the fact that everybody loves it, doesn't mean that it's a revenue generator. And it is. It's a big deal for this community, and I'm not taking anything away from it, but we just don't have enough capacity for seating to sell enough tickets to generate revenue. And let's go back. The SEC, the Big Ten, even the ACC at a much lower level, but the first two specifically have such big TV deals, all driven by, or largely driven by, football, is what makes everything else grander. So, the AAC is in an interesting position. I think, we talk about, and the fear has been, and obviously with the movement in football at East Carolina, we've been passed by App State. We've been passed by this one and that one. I think the problem is our conference is being passed by the Sun Belt. Our conference is being passed by quote unquote lesser conferences that have decided to be really good at who they are and not necessarily trying to keep up with the Joneses.
All right, Mully, Mike Houston dismissed this week. Full disclosure, you have a friendship with Mike and his wife, Amanda, and your children know their children, and maybe you didn't want that out in the streets, but I just put it out there anyway. So, but the point
Yep.
is, Mike Houston has made a lot of friends like yourself in this community. I mean, people that he has built relationships with. That's the tough part of this deal. But I just want to get your reaction to this as someone who knows the community, someone that goes to football games and is a fan on some level, and but then someone who had a relationship with the coach beyond just, hey, that's the coach of our football team.
Yeah, I mean, first off, the relationship with Mike and Amanda and their family and my specifically my sons and they're unchanged. We still think a lot of them. They're great people, and I mean, we did enjoy the time we got to spend with them, and but I think when you go back to what happened on the field and kind of the overall trajectory, I think it was a time where if a decision was going to be made to go a different direction, then it was probably that time. In other words, it was kind of rip the Band-Aid off time for the football program. And it's one of those things where and this is strictly my opinion, this is not any insider information, but a lot of people were, well, why didn't they make the move at the break? Well, I think it'd been a really tough situation to hand the keys over to Blake Harrell going into Army, regardless of having a bye week or not. I mean, it's kind of it could have worked out in his favor, but he also, could have gone in there and maybe performed like we performed anyway, and theoretically a blowout despite the score. And how do you build on that going into the Temple week? Let's face it, the program's positioned to potentially win the next 3 games, get bowl eligible, and changes the dynamic that everybody has kind of in their gut for what's going on. So I understand it. I don't know if I agree or disagree. I don't know. It's one of those things. If you look back, PJ, the last decade has not been too kind to East Carolina football, especially on a consistency level. And you start to look and go, okay, what's the common denominator? Is it the coach on the sideline, or are there other issues that need to be addressed before this program has a chance to succeed? And I think this coaching hire, I mean, I don't think it's factual. This coaching hire is a big one for John Gilbert and his his future here at East Carolina. And I'm sure, obviously he knows that he's an AD, he knows what he signed up for, but it's difficult. I hear the debates all the time and get kind of sucked into some of these debates, and some of them maybe I start on my own. But do we go hire the young guy that's totally unproven and hope for the best and think maybe we catch lightning in a bottle with another Lincoln Riley type person? But we see the struggles that Lincoln's having now. So, how does that validate or discredit, that approach? Or do you go after the proven entity, and the one that embodies it? That to me would be a Skip Holtz, a guy that we know that can raise money, and maybe you do kind of a 2 to 3 year bridge deal with him and see if he could come in and kind of stabilize things. And again, no guarantees there. So, I don't know, man. It's tough. It's I'm sure they'll do their due diligence and invest however much time and money and resources into vetting out the potential coaching list. But I just don't know. Man, I don't know. It just seems to be a deeper problem to me, PJ. It ties into years back when the success of this program was built on the back of a lot of non-qualifiers, academic casualties, if you will, coming out of high school, where the conference would allow a kid to come in and gray shirt and get his academics in order and get himself college eligible, and you could build with those kids, and they were somewhat, and I hate to use the word trap, but they were somewhat trapped by their academic status. And of course, the world was much different then too. But I don't, that to me seems to be the point at which, that things kind of got a little sideways. And, hopefully with this next hire, we can get pulled out of the ditch and get Pirate football back on top.
Hey, Mully, thanks a lot.
Always, buddy.
Yep. All right, we're rolling, so just count down and go.